Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Iron Fist, Season 1, Episode 1. It's called Snow Gives Way. We will start spoiler free, because of course it is the very first episode, and we always start spoiler free. Usually we go full spoilers, but with Episode 1s for new shows, we like to try and see what it's like, give an opinion without spoiling details, so you can decide for yourself if you want to go watch it. And obviously it's on Netflix, it's the fourth of the Netflix shows from Marvel. Obviously, we've already had Daredevil, 2 seasons of that. We've had Jessica Jones, we've had Luke Cage. We're getting Defenders later this year that brings all these four sort of main characters together. And this was kind of notable, and it was the first one that had kind of mixed, well, I say mixed, mostly negative reviews. The other ones
Yeah,
were all pretty positive. This one, not as much.
yeah, definitely. And that was worrying because we've had some issues with the pacing in general of these series.
Yeah, even when we like them, we think they're a bit lax in pacing. They feel a little bit drawn out, and even to the point where pretty much all of them, I think, should be at least a 2 or 3 episodes shorter. We all think, we've thought
Yeah.
about all of the seasons, even the ones we really liked. We thought, even Jessica Jones, Daredevil season 1, we thought could have done with cutting 2 or 3 episodes just to tighten it up. But
And what was particularly worrying is it's always the second half that's more lacking. And the advanced reviewers only get the first half of the season as a rule. And if they're not enjoying that half, what does that say to leave us with our usual concerns?
and of course, I mean, this could buck the trend. This could be the one that gets better in the second half, unlike
You
all the other
never know.
shows. But
You never know.
you know. Uh, of course, the other big thing was there was a lot of controversy back when this was being cast and stuff because of the lead character. Because even though Danny Rand, who's the Iron Fist, the sort of martial arts expert, who's the lead character, even though in the comics he was white, there was an argument to be made that maybe they should have cast an Asian actor because despite the fact that he was always white in the comics, he was also created at a time when pretty much every character was
I will
white.
say at the time, I did defend this based on the fact that there are stories that actively play into this
Oh,
that he is
sure,
white.
sure, sure.
So,
I think there was arguments for and against the casting at the
yes.
time. But unfortunately, now admittedly, we've only seen one episode so far, but at least from the reviews, the early reviews of everything, it sounded like all the reasons that people who wanted them to cast an Asian actor were worried were all founded.
Yeah, so far there's nothing that bad.
There's one thing that bothered me about that in that sense in this first episode.
Really?
There was one thing, yeah, that stuck
Okay.
out to me as an example of
Is
this.
is it the language thing?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm going to defend that actually.
Yeah,
But
you
we'll
get
do that
defend that.
later.
Alright, we'll save that for spoilers.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was so it was controversy from the start, and then the reviews, and then the lead actor Finn Jones has been kind of defending it. He's been kind of going off on a weird tangent. He sounds like he's really grasping at straws and blaming Trump and saying things like we made it for the fans, not the critics, which always sounds really desperate and kind of insulting to fans. Not that we kind of fall in that boat. Certainly not me. I've never read an Iron Fist comic. I don't really care about Iron Fist. I'm completely
I read
fresh.
them in this last couple of weeks. I did this for obviously for Daredevil. I'd read a bunch of Daredevil in the past. I did this for Jessica Jones because the I didn't do it for Luke Cage because there wasn't a singular Luke Cage story that I knew I could just go to.
Yeah, well,
Whereas
yeah.
Iron Fist did have one.
There was not a definitive Luke Cage. This is the first Luke Cage story that everyone. There's Jessica Jones, you the alias. Daredevil, you go to Bendis stuff, you go to Brubaker stuff, whatever. Or
Iron Fist is the
Frank Miller, yeah. And Iron Fist,
Yeah.
you go to Immortal Iron Fist by
Fraction and Brubaker.
Yeah. So, aye. So I mean, I'm not coming into this as someone who cares. In fact, this was the even before we even got to this. This was the least of the four in terms of my interest because I mystical sort of stuff.
Since all of them were announced, this was always your least anticipated.
The funny thing is, though, is that any criticisms I have of this episode have nothing to do with like why I would have been concerned back when they announced them all. None of it's to do with the fact that the character's based in mysticism or anything like that.
Well, that's because there's no mention of any of it at this point.
Well, I would argue
I mean,
there's some hints of it,
there's
but,
hints, but
but like, but even if there was, that wouldn't be my issue here. Like the issues I have with this first episode have nothing to do with
oh
that.
yeah, yeah.
My issues
it
with
has
this,
its own problems.
yeah, my issues with this episode are purely issues I'd have with anything. You know, it's not to do with the sort of the genesis of the plot. Although there's plot problems, but it's not because of that. Yeah. So obviously this was the first one. we went in with really weird expectations, where it was like, reviews aren't good, not feeling
So
it.
I want it to be good. I'm kind of hopeful, but not really because everyone's shitting on it.
And honestly, I mean, it's not a train wreck. I don't think it's terrible.
It's kind of aggressively mediocre.
Yes, it is aggressively mediocre. I think there was times when the acting's pretty rough. There was a flashback with kids that
Yeah.
almost made me laugh out loud with how poor the acting was. I honestly don't think Finn Jones is that good.
I think he's fine. I don't think he's a show lead.
He's not a show lead. I don't know. There's something about him. He's just not carrying it for me. It feels.
That's fair.
He feels. I don't know. I don't know what the word is.
He's
Out,
just
out of his
there.
element.
Yeah.
He's trying to do something that's just out of his reach, and it's not quite working. And one of my biggest problems, I think, actually, with the first episode is that I don't find Danny that likable, and I think he's an idiot.
I can't really argue with that.
I think he's an idiot. A lot of this, because the sort of core plot of this first episode, without getting too far into spoilers, just sort of the general setup is he returns after being missing for 15 years. Him and his parents were down in a plane crash, and he shows up looking a bit rough and homeless looking, and people don't really believe that he's who he's, because they, for as far as they're concerned, Danny Rand's been dead for 15 years.
Yeah, and why should they believe him?
And it's obviously, people were joking about this when the first trailer came out, but I was really thinking at the start of this, like, this is very Arrow, and it's like
It's hard to avoid these comparisons.
I could almost hear my name is Danny Rand, and for 15 years I was on an island.
It is actually hard to ignore how similar they are at this point.
Do you know what the sad part is it pales in comparison. And even though I hate Arrow, and I've hated Arrow for a while, Stephen Amell's just got more charisma.
Just better, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, he kind of holds the screen. He
And
holds your
obviously,
attention.
I like early Arrow a lot more than you, but
Yeah.
you liked it more than you do now.
Sure, yeah, that's fair.
And I think we're both in agreement. It's better that then, not now. That then was better than this
In most ways.
in most ways. Yeah, not in every way.
I think this has better production. You can tell there's more money behind this. It feels like
Yeah.
they're shooting in New York streets. It's got like a bigger budget feel to it. However, unfortunately, that does not work for the fighting scenes, which is really a big deal because when this is the martial arts of the four, this is what was going to make this distinctive. Is this was the martial arts show.
Yeah.
The fighting in this, it pales in comparison to Daredevil. It is actually kind of sad and shocking because there's a fight scene very early on with some security guards, and honestly, like, I couldn't believe just how sort of laid back it felt. It felt like it was going at half speed almost.
Do you know what? This is something I'm also going to compare it to Arrow for. So Arrow got criticized. Its fight scenes were generally pretty good, but it often got criticized early on for over editing. So it felt like it was cutting between things too much. But I feel like this could have done with a bit more of that, and give it some momentum.
Do you know what the thing is? I think it's great. See, if you can show a lot of a fight scene in one shot, it feels impressive if the fighting itself is impressive. The problem is here is it felt like the actor had memorized the moves, but he was only going in like so quick because he was memorizing like a dance move. It wasn't quick enough to feel like it had
Yeah,
impact.
they didn't speed it
or-
up or anything.
Yeah, it felt so. There was no energy or drive to it, and it felt like pretend. It felt like they were pretending to fight.
Which is why weirdly I feel like some cuts would have worked. Kind of give some angles, some snaps, and make it feel like it had some speed to it.
Yeah, because it fell flat for me. It completely fell flat.
Yeah, pretty much.
And when you go into that show like Iron Fist, and the entire opening title sequence is like, they've got a CG character doing martial arts moves, but as the credits play out, you're like,
I kind of like the opening titles. Not gonna lie.
the visuals were okay. I thought the music was kind of lackluster.
I quite enjoyed it.
I don't know. It felt too laid back.
Yeah, but that's kind of. I know it was quite laid back, but I was enjoying it for what it
I
was.
don't know. Like it felt like against. And again, I've never read Iron Fist. Maybe he's supposed to feel laid back, but
I think he is. He definitely is, and I think that's kind of the idea of that bit. At least it doesn't excuse the martial arts, but at least the laid back tone there is kind of like, yeah, look, he can do all this cool stuff without even really being that much of a big
and
deal.
honestly, I think part of the race complaint is he is a privileged white douchebag, and even though he comes back to the city and he's been gone since he was a kid, and he maybe you can say he's just being naive in a lot of ways. I think part of the reason why he's so hard to like sympathize with is he is generally a moron. He expects things just to be waiting for him. He doesn't. Like, he should be predicting a lot of things that he does not predict in this episode.
Do you know what I honestly found to be the single most relatable thing about his character?
Mm-hmm.
He is a very upstanding gentleman who drinks tea and not coffee. That's it. That's as much as I've got.
Honestly, I didn't like most of the characters. The only character I liked was Colleen. She was the only one that I kind of liked. She mainly because she wasn't the only one that felt like she was hamming it up. Everyone else felt like they were.
Yeah, I'm not sure I've seen enough that I'd say I like her, but at the same time, there's little enough that she definitely didn't annoy me.
Yeah, well, let me rephrase that. She's the only one I don't actively dislike.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate. I'd agree with that.
Because all the other main characters, I don't like that much.
Yeah.
And the pacing in this episode was really bad. We heard from the early reviews that the pacing was very laxed. And all the shows have had a little bit of a problem with pacing here or there. But this definitely feels the slowest by far out of the four of them.
Yeah, they've mostly been pacing of the season and a little bit of episode pacing, but I checked the time thinking I must be nearly done. I was only about halfway through.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that the other shows as well, they had multiple characters that were following. You know, start Daredevil. It's not just Matt being Daredevil and doing his Daredevil things. He's also, we're interested in Foggy, we're interested in Karen, we're interested in all these different players who are all interested in their own ways, and they're all serving the plot in different ways. We're interested, well, we don't get Kingpin right away, he was built up for a few episodes, but we're built to things. And I think my biggest problem with this episode actually is that when you combine everything up, I'm like, what did we actually achieve in this episode in terms of advancing the plot? Really, all we really have, and this is still spoiler free. He comes back after 15 years. People don't believe that he's Danny Rand, and we find out kind of who a villain is, and that's about it. We don't really advance anything. Nothing really comes forward in the plot in this first episode. It's really weird.
Yeah. Also, on the villain, so we've spoken about Danny as the hero, obviously, and how he compares to the others, not particularly favorably, but this is easily the weakest villain debut of any of the Marvel shows.
Yeah, I absolutely. It's so easy, and that's not to say that they've all been great necessarily.
No, there's been some fumbling, but like the introductions that we've had in the first episodes, whether that be the rumblings of it in Daredevil,
or even like someone like, because Diamondback wasn't great in Luke Cage, but they built up to him at least and you know, it's like we kept hearing about him. It was sort of built, and even if it ended up being kind of goofy.
I'm kind of hoping this pulls a similar, because obviously we had Cottonmouth and then Diamondback. I'm really hoping we have this and then something else. Like, I hope that might help if we grow into something else, because I'm not feeling this one at all. I'm
not feeling it.
There is, especially for the style of villain that it is, there's no charisma.
Yeah, and I think, you know, most of the episode is Danny just sort of running around like he's homeless and trying to talk to various people. That is the majority of the episode.
Yes,
it is. That really is it. It didn't really feel like a whole lot happened, in all honesty, and it's kind of weird. I think by the end of like episode 1 of any of the other Marvel Netflix shows, I got a clear sense of what the show was trying to and wanting to be. I got the Luke Cage, this is a Western, like they had that big moment at the end where he finally raised his hands and hit someone, and it was like, he's reluctant hero, this is what this show is. And sure, those criticisms you can make it Luke Cage, pacing overall, Diamondback in the second half, but I got what the show was and what it was trying to do, and it gave me some interesting characters. Jessica Jones, you got this really menacing threat from Purple Man, Kilgrave. Yeah, really. Admittedly, Daredevil maybe didn't hook you till the end of the second episode for obvious reasons if you've seen that, but episode 1 still gave you.
It gave you enough that you went, oh, so there's the law firm and then this on the side.
Yeah.
Like, you got what this was. This, it feels like, okay, so he's returned. I assume he wants to get his company back, just because that's.
And how long?
What I expect. What?
And how long are we going to be doing that exactly? I don't.
That's my problem. Okay, so I get that he hasn't even said he wants his company back. I don't think, not really.
No.
But I'm just assuming, because that's the kind of standard here.
Which feels very Green Arrow as well.
It does, but also, to what purpose? What point does he? Why does he want it back? Other than it's just his. What's the point to any of this?
No, I agree. I think we should go to spoilers. I feel like we're
Just I will give it one positive.
okay.
I really like the music. Like throughout, I think it's really good. There's a couple of great song choices that kind of fit the tone for me, and then there's these nice slow synth pads that
Honestly,
I'm feeling.
I completely disagree.
Oh, I'm feeling it.
I thought the opening song was completely out of place. It took me right out of it for some reason. I don't know that this upbeat sort of hip hop song as he's like walking through the
See,
streets. I don't
I'm
know.
feeling it.
It wasn't working for me. It right away it was giving me this jarring tone. I don't think this show knows what tone it wants.
Well, no, but I'm going with what the music tells me, and that's what I want to see more of.
I think if they wanted to go like full into, alright, let's make this the Kung Fu series and go with like, you know, if Luke Cage was a Western crosses with a blaxploitation thing, make this harken back to Kung Fu movies of the 70s and stuff, and maybe lean into the cheese a little bit with that. Maybe that would be the fun stuff to do. But it feels like it's sort of dancing on this line where it's still trying to be serious and feel like it's part of the Netflix show's world.
Yeah, and obviously they told us beforehand we're not getting a costume, not even a mask.
Yeah, it's almost like, and I've seen other people say this who are more familiar with the comics, so they can speak to it better than I can, but it does feel a little bit like it's kind of ashamed of what it is, which is really weird for a Marvel thing, because the one thing that Marvel movies and shows have been really good at for the last decade is they're not ashamed of what they wear.
Yeah,
They
they're
have,
not always good.
not always
but-
good, but yeah, they're always, yeah, we'll have Captain America in his outfit, we'll have Thor looking at Thor, and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Whereas this is the first one where it feels like they're kind of
It is
shying
weird
away.
because even Daredevil, where for most of the first season you didn't have the costume, you had a costume. This
That's true.
is he going to be doing Iron Fist things just like he is now? I don't get it.
Well, there's already images from the Defenders, and he's still not got a costume. He's still just
Oh, I haven't looked at any of those.
yeah. There's a couple of set photos, but he's like he's just wearing this like white shirt.
See, it worked for Luke Cage because that was his whole thing. Is like he doesn't want to be a hero. He doesn't want to do this. He just reluctantly does.
Yeah, literally, if he's in a yellow t-shirt, he's in costume. Good, right, done,
Yeah.
perfect. Move on.
Whereas this guy is supposed to be, assuming he gets his company back, you know, he's supposed to be this rich kid. Presumably, his face will be known everywhere. It's the story of his disappearance. Of it wasn't exactly a secret. So it's like, do you not want to hide your identity a little bit? I don't know. I don't get it.
All right, we're pretty down on this.
Yeah.
Which is a shame because we have 12 more of the bloody things to do, so that'll be fun. But yeah, it's not terrible. It's not like absolute garbage by any means. It's not. It's like
It's just such a step down from all the other Marvel shows.
yeah, it had no momentum, and that goes for just the overall pacing and the fight scenes themselves. There was no momentum.
Yeah, the bit that really did it for me, there was a bit in a car. It was going up in circles, whatever, and it was like, okay, it doesn't even feel like it's moving. It's going that slowly, but I'm supposed to believe he's speeding this up.
And of course, the biggest worrying sign for me was when I found out it was the showrunner who did the 3 worst seasons of Dexter. Which, if anyone who watched Dexter, watched it all the way to the end. I actually didn't. I didn't watch the last season because by that point it was so terrible. But he did like the last 3 seasons, so I seen 2 of them. And then I heard what happened in the series finale, and it was gobsmackingly awful. And this is the guy who's running Iron Fist. He's also doing Inhumans, so lower your expectations for that right now.
Yep, they just dropped.
Yep. But yeah, Scott Buck, I think his name is. I could be wrong. I'm just doing that. I'm pulling that out of my ass from memory, but it's something like that. He's the showrunner. But here we go. So let's get some spoilers. Let's talk about some actual plot details. So full spoilers from this point on, from episode 1 of Iron Fist. So he comes back. He comes into his building and he's got no shoes on. He's all barefoot, and he ends up fighting the guards, which looks really bad. He then locks the guards out from where the elevators are by putting one of their batons through the door. And then someone still comes into the elevator, which I thought was really weird. I thought, where did she come from if the door was just blocked?
I guess that she was already on that side of the door.
I guess. Kind of weird that she didn't, look, wait, why is this guy locking the guards out? This is a bit suspicious.
I mean, I just assumed that was the lobby entrance, and then there was a full complex of things behind the other side of the door.
I mean,
So she could have come from round a hallway, out the door.
Yeah, she could have came from the other side, but it stuck out to me because it looked like she came from the same direction as the door. Maybe that's just an editing
That might be, yeah.
mistake more than anything else. But it stuck out to me because not because it's necessarily that big a deal, because it's not. It stuck out to me because I'm like, this already feels a little bit sloppy. And so he gets up and we meet Ward and Joy, who are his childhood friends. They're brother and sister, and he was friends with them when he was a kid. And Ward's older, and we get a flashback at one point of them playing Monopoly, and the acting.
This might be the worst moment of the episode.
It probably is. The acting from none of them was
Everyone.
good. Yeah, none of them was good. But the older kid Ward, like the actor playing him, was especially terrible.
See, I don't know if he was necessarily worse than the others, or just that he was given more dialogue because he was older.
Oh, that's true. That's true. But he goes into a rage at one point and like swipes all the Monopoly pieces off the board, and it looks, again, no momentum, no energy. It just looks kind of like he's pretending that he's angry rather than angry. It's really...
it's just that was awful.
And
there was no excusing that bit, at least.
And of course they immediately go, "You're not Danny. Danny's dead," and like they call security, and he actually Slimy. And over the course of the episode, we find out that he is pretty much going to be the villain, or at least he's the henchman to the real villain, who's his father, who is pretending to be dead but is secretly still alive in his secret lair.
Because of course. And this is my problem with the villain, is if you count both of them.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like this. They're businessmen as the rival. I'll take you from both fronts, presumably. But business enemies in film and TV have to have charisma.
They do.
That's the only way they work.
He has none. He has a bottomless pit where charisma is supposed to be. And the funny thing is they actually, at one point, so they basically, he tries to tell him that he's Danny, and they don't believe him. And this is my first problem with Danny, is I'm like, you had to have known that this, they might not
why would they
recognise
believe you?
Yeah, it's been 50, the last time they saw you, you were 10. You have changed a lot since you were 10.
Which made it even weirder when Joy was like, kind of looks like Danny. It's like, does he? You saw a kid. You're like, what?
But my biggest problem is, though, is like, so they don't believe him the first time, and he then tries throughout the episode, he breaks into her house at one point, and then he repeatedly tries to see both of them in different locations. And all I could think was, like, you don't have to go through this charade. You go to the police and you say, right, I'm this person, I've come back, and they will start a procedure to prove who you are. And it's just a process. You would just go through this. If not the police, social services, whoever, you would go to a governing body of some kind, and you would start the procedure to get your life back. You don't.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily just walk into the room and trying to have to convince like someone who kind of knew you a long time ago.
Joe was weird. At least I was like, okay, how are you supposed to prove this? And then Ward's like, hey, do a DNA test. He's like, well, there's no living relatives to check it against. It's like,
yeah,
okay.
I've had your fingerprint stick. Here's the worst part about this though, is like as soon as they started questioning, like, well, just tell them something only you would know.
Yeah,
right?
just tell them about this day with the Monopoly.
Right, and then when he meets her outside her house, she basically says, right, well, tell me stuff, and he starts telling her stuff. He's like, and instead of telling her something like the Monopoly that only he would know, or telling her something else that's private, he says, oh, we were on this team together, and we did this in school. I'm like, and she points out quite rightly, anyone can look that up. You could find that information out.
The homeless man in the park could have done that.
Exactly, as we see with his iPhone that he stole from someone. Like, anyone could look that up, and I'm just like, Danny, stop being an idiot. Just say something that only she would know. This is stupid.
Can I just say, on the homeless man in the park with the iPhone, I'm really glad they said that it was stolen, because up to that point I was like, oh my god, why is there a homeless man with an iPhone? Like, I thought they were just telling me this homeless man had an iPhone.
Bet he doesn't have healthcare.
Clearly not. How very topical of you.
I'm sorry. It was just too easy. I was just too easy. But no, he so he does that, and then he basically kidnaps Ward in his car in a later scene. Again, this doesn't look like you're a crazy person and suspicious. But then he finally does say some stuff. He's like, oh, you bullied me, you kicked me in the nuts, and you put me in a locker, and you did this and you did that.
You fed me a frog.
You fed me a frog. And I'm like, oh, finally, he's saying stuff that only he would know. And then this is the one time the villain that Ward almost became interesting. Because he says, oh, that never happened. And I'm like, wait, he knows he's really Danny now, but he is choosing to try and just make him look like a crazy person. He's going to go down this path, and that could almost be interesting. Unfortunately, like we said, he has no charisma, and then he kind of goes against it when he sees his father in a later scene. He still
like,
talks about...
Is this that's what made me think there, because in that scene when he says, "Oh, that's not you," I was like, okay, so he's pretending it like...
Yeah.
I was like, why don't you just go, "Yeah, I know this, but no one else will believe you."
Yeah, he's
that'd be
evil.
really fun.
Yeah.
Get under your skin. But has he blocked this out? Has he forgotten that he was that much of a dick?
And they set up in that Monopoly scene that Joy's a lot more sympathetic. Like she looks like she's uncomfortable when he's getting bullied.
Yeah.
And then obviously the twist at the end of the episode is that she actually drugs him, and they're standing side by side with him like passed out. Like Danny's,
She probably should have drugged him. He broke into her house, and then he's broken into her office or wherever it was.
Yeah, it actually seems kind of justified.
Yeah. What I don't get though is the thing is the Monopoly scene. That's what's bothering me most. The purpose of it, as far as this tells us, is just that, oh, he was a dick as a kid, right?
Uh-huh.
But they could have used this, have him bring it up in front of both of them.
Well, you see, it's foreshadowing because Ward only cares about the business and the money, and they play Monopoly.
Oh, yeah. Rules are for pussies.
It's just yes, that's the line he says. My dad says rules are for pussies. Great Parrington there, Daddy Ward. Or Daddy Meacham, I should say. Yeah, and honestly, I don't think the actor playing the dad was all that great.
No.
And I do want to point out, I don't necessarily want to blame the acting in a lot of these cases. I actually do think it could be something as simple as the direction, rather than the actors being...
That's the thing, especially like Finn Jones, the only one I've seen elsewhere. I've seen him in Game of Thrones, and he was perfectly fine in that. He wasn't a leading man, obviously,
Yeah.
but he was fine.
I don't know, the character's just not very... It's not likeable, I don't think.
Not particularly.
He just expects things, and it's... I get this feeling like when he runs into Colleen in the park and she's putting up posters for her karate class or whatever, and and he's going up and he's sort of like chatting with her, and he's trying to convince her, oh, maybe I could get a job at your dojo, and she's like, no, I've got someone who cleans, haha, he looks homeless. He's like, oh no, I'm actually a martial artist, I'm really good at it, promise. And the whole thing, it feels like I'm supposed to like him and want him to like get people to convince, and I just kind of feel like I don't really care.
Go about it in a smart... If he went about it in a realistic way, I think I would. Because
possibly.
There's nothing wrong with the inherentness of the story.
It feels like he just repeatedly does not give the information that would work, like would actually end the conversation and get them believing him or whatever.
That's the thing in that bit where he talks to Colleen for the first time and he pulls out the other languages.
Yeah, which is the one bit I had kind of a problem with.
See, I don't, on the basis of her saying, sorry, I haven't spoken that particular language since I was a child. Like
After
she says English or Japanese, please. I've only speak Mandarin. I haven't spoken since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. He's been in China presumably, and he's been speaking that. So I don't think that was that weird.
Why does he assume that she speaks Mandarin?
Was there some? I think there was maybe some on the leaflet.
Oh, okay.
I'm assuming that he read some on the leaflet.
It felt like an assumption to me.
Well, okay, I get that, but
that's why I had a problem. That's why I had a problem with it, because he's just hitting out Mandarin like, oh, she's clearly Chinese.
I assumed that because of whatever martial arts she was promoting, it was a Chinese one that they... Because a lot of martial arts, even when you teach them in English-speaking countries, use the words from those other countries still. Yeah, so you learn bits of the language. So I was thinking maybe that's why he tried that, because it was this martial art, and he thought, oh, maybe you've picked some up from that.
All right. Okay. Still, though, I feel like, again, it's like he could quickly end this conversation, and instead of saying something that would convince the people of what he is, or who he is, or that he can fight, or whatever, he says weird cryptic things like, I must defend the honor of the god of lightning, or whatever he said, and...
The Thunderer.
Yeah. And he's saying all this crap, and it's like, okay, I get that this is a thing for you, right? And that's fine. But you don't open with that. You sound like a crazy person.
Yeah. The dojo one was especially weird because it's like, okay, look, hey, I speak this language. Do you think maybe I learned some martial arts too? I could show you. Especially let me audition.
He shows up and he's like, I want to challenge your master.
Yeah, that was a bit not great.
Whoa, why are you assuming that she's not the master?
And she is kind of has that opinion.
Yeah, she does.
I would call out the show for being sexist, but this is clearly showing that he's just like that because it's aware that that's wrong. And
I mean, I don't know.
she's
Maybe
like, hey, come on.
maybe Kunlun is nothing but men. I don't know that for sure. I'm just kind of. You've read some of the comic. Is Kunlun just men?
It's not just men. There's women there.
All right, okay.
From in the little bit that I've saw.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. But yeah, again, it just kind of felt weird. And of course, he gets attacked immediately leaving the dojo. So she sees him do a bit of fighting. Before that, though, there's a really, really cheesy bit where he leaps over a taxi cab. And it looked really goofy.
Yeah, it did.
That looked really goofy.
And that's the thing. It could be fun goofy if they played it up.
Yeah. So
but because they play it so straight.
So at first I was thinking, oh, this is really convenient. He's getting mugged, even though he looks homeless right outside the building. Now, to be fair, turned out to be security from the company, so it's obvious that Ward has sent them to take care of him.
I did think it was a little bit on the nose where he shouts, "Hey, you're the security guy." It's like, yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. That's not my main problem. So they chase him through, there's like a Chinese parade
Sort
or
of
festival. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he puts on one of the. I think of Three Ninjas when I see these masks because they all wore them in that movie. But he wears this decorative mask to hide from them, and he sort of like a bit of cat and mouse through the crowd.
Not the worst idea ever.
No, it's fine. But so the head security guy comes in and he starts like. He beats him up, right? And he leans down and grabs him. After he hits him, he goes, "Who sent you? You already said out loud, you're the security guard from my family's company. I wonder who it could be. Who sent him?
Who's in charge of that company right now?"
So once again, he's an idiot. He's a moron. It's very hard to be sympathetic when he is this thick.
Yeah, it really is. There's no get around it, is there?
Oh god, and look, and that's the other thing. See, when he first popped up at the start of the episode at the company, and he goes up to it, he's like, "Oh, where's such and such who used to work at reception? Oh, where's such and such who used to be the head of security?" And he keeps saying these things.
Yeah.
And
It's been 15 years, and everything's going to be exactly the same. Ask him for the Meacham. I can't remember the daddy Meacham's name.
Harold.
Harold. Asking for him, I get it. He was kind of high up in the company.
Yeah, he'd still be there.
He was like, oh, he probably took over. Okay, I get asking for him. It was really obvious that they were going to say he was dead. But, because they were like, hey, why are you asking for him at reception? It's like, you sure you want him? It's like, yeah, he's clearly dead. Or that's what they want to say.
Yeah. And even the other characters, I don't always think acted in a realistic way.
Yeah.
Like, I feel if someone did come in claiming to be this person who especially when you never found the body, they say this later in the episode.
They explicitly say they didn't find the plane, let alone the body.
Yeah. So, I'd like to. I would think that if someone who I thought had been dead for 15 years showed up and said they were them, sure, I'd be skeptical, but I don't think I would necessarily just assume you're a crazy homeless. I mean, okay, sure, he looks homeless, fine, but you wouldn't necessarily just assume that you're
you go,
100%
hey,
not.
Let's take this to the authorities and get this straightened out.
Yes. You would say with a reasonable sort of voice, you'd say, look, it's kind of hard to believe, but you're going to have to prove it one way or the other. Let's go and deal with this, right? We're going to do it over a cup of tea. Because you're a stranger.
Yeah. This makes no sense, some of this.
And the funny thing is you think, oh, maybe it would be easier to believe him because he keeps referencing things that were only here, like the last time he was around. Because he said, let's go to this coffee shop to get some tea. It's like, oh, that place has been shut for years.
Yeah, and he knows the people who were the previous head of security, and you know, the woman who was on reception. Like, he's pulling out names that, sure, you could probably look up if you tried, but there wouldn't be common knowledge.
Of course, they try and pass it off. They think it's some sort of corporate espionage, like, oh, this will discredit us because they'll think, oh, if he is actually him, then he'll have 51% of the company's stock, and therefore it looks like there's a power struggle, and it makes us look weak because we're opening a branch of China and so on, and that all felt just a bit convoluted.
It did. It really did. I don't get how any of these people work. They don't make sense.
They don't.
That's a real problem.
Which is why Colleen is the one I like, because she has a dojo. She teaches. She
wants money just to keep the dojo open.
I was saying karate because she said she's fluent in Japanese, so I assumed it was karate. But if If you're right and it was like Kung Fu on the poster, and so you assumed Mandarin because
Well,
of
it
that.
wasn't Kung Fu because she said, "Oh, do you teach Kung Fu?"
Oh, right, okay, yeah.
And she was like, "No," and he's like, "Oh, you should, a bit more money." So, but I'm sure there's other martial arts that it could have been. I wasn't.
Oh, yeah, there's several
exactly,
martial arts.
Exactly.
Karate and Kung Fu are just the two most common.
Exactly. But there's any number of things it could have been.
Yeah. There was probably a passing line to reference which one it was. I just didn't catch it.
Yeah, I missed it as well.
But yeah, so he sneaks into the building again at the end, and she drugs him. Yeah, Joy drugs him with tea, and that's kind of we end the episode with him waking up in a hospital bed. It looks like they're submitting him for insanity to a hospital.
Yeah, just section him.
Yeah, that seems to, and everyone's just sort of going along with it. No one thinks to actually check out his story, because the authorities would never do that. The authorities would just assume he's a crazy person.
I know. Just, I mean, that was the thing that Joy did that made the most sense all episode. Hey, I'm going to drug you. I'm not safe with you here, so I'm going to, knock you out. Basically.
Also, actually, I want to go back to the cab thing, the jumping over the cab.
Yeah,
Because I've just thought of the other thing that I have a big problem with. Why did that happen?
because he stepped out for no reason.
Yes, he stepped out for no reason. Like, was his whole thing, I'm going to show her that I'm just not normal, but I don't see how that helped his case, or why that
I don't understand
helps.
either. It doesn't make him seem more like Danny Rand, does it?
No, if anything, it makes you seem more like a weirdo.
Yeah, and it's not like you wanted to remember you, because you're pretty memorable already.
See, it'd have been fine if he'd, like, accidentally almost get hit by the car, and then quickly saved himself. That'd have
But
been
he
fine.
seemed to actively step out.
It doesn't even seem he did actually.
I'm giving it a small benefit of the doubt.
They're on the curb. They're fine.
I know.
They're good. And he just decides to walk out in front of the cab to show off. Oh, look at my cat-like reflexes, my mystical powers.
Check out these skills, girl. That's what it is, basically. This was not that good, actually. It's gotten worse as I've talked about it.
Oh dear, it's only gonna get, because I think one of the big things, to go back to the whole race controversy and him being like the white savior kind of thing that's the reviews have talked about. I can see that coming into, because I believe like he's going to end up being much better at martial arts than Colleen is probably, and it's going to feel kind of weird.
For me, that depends on how they speak about their backgrounds, like in martial arts. Like, sure, she's running a dojo, but how long's she been doing this? How many hours a day?
Oh, sure.
I assume that he's been learning from the best on earth for the last 15 years, day in, day out.
Yeah, but this is all just like reasoning. You're just justifying it.
It is. But it's something that in story I can buy. If I spent 15 years, day in, day out doing it, I'd probably be pretty good too. Well, I mean, I wouldn't, but...
Well, yeah, but the show still revolves a white guy coming here and
I know.
being better than it than everyone else. Like, the story makers had to make that choice.
Yeah.
They had to make that decision, and they can justify it in the stuff all they want. The problem isn't that it's one time. Like, if this was never done before, no one would give a shit. If that's the story is, oh, this one white guy got really good at martial arts and he's better than everyone else because he's the chosen one, god damn it, that would be fine if we'd never done it before. The problem is that this is almost always how it's done.
See, I'm okay with it up until it's the chosen one part. It's like, okay, you put in dedication and work, fine, I'll allow that. It's when it's the chosen one that it gets more awkward for me.
Yeah, I was actually thinking during the episode, well, because obviously part of the whole thing, because it looks like we're going to get flashbacks, again, very Arrow, to after the plane crash, which, by the way, really horrible CG in the plane.
Yeah, and do you know what I really hated about that in particular? It was really bothering me. So the plane's going down, it drops the oxygen mask that you're supposed to wear. Not a single one of them reaches for the oxygen mask. The mother comes over to him. I thought she was going to put the mask on him. So it's like, hey, I'm doing this. This is my son. I'm going to make sure he's safe.
No,
as much as I can do.
She was doing the Uncle Ben just before she died.
Yeah, I thought she'd at least have put the mask on before she died. No, straight out of the bloody roof.
Yeah.
Which I had to give an audible laugh when she went flying out the roof. Yeah. That is not the reaction I was supposed to have.
Because we end this sort of these quick glimpses of these flashbacks with him being found by what looks like two Kunlun monks.
Yeah.
Which is going to lead to his training and stuff and whatever. Now, I know a big part of the character is the sort of classic culture. He's different to everyone else that's there. But you could have done that with a different Asian person for a start. Like, Asian people from different Asian countries don't necessarily... They see them as different. Chinese people see Japanese people as a different group of
Well, that's
people.
because they are.
Well, they are, but that's what I mean. Though, like to them, they would stick out just as much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I was actually thinking as I was watching this, maybe you could have kept that by casting a black person as Danny Rand. But then I thought, well, no, because maybe part of the relationship between him and Luke Cage that is so special is that they're so different, and maybe by casting a black person, you kind of take a wee bit of that away.
Which is why I kind of defended the white guy. Like the white billionaire is kind of the idea that he's supposed to learn, and it's not necessarily in his own story, but with Luke Cage, like the fact that they are so different, but they can come together and do things. I like the core concept of that.
Yeah, but here's the problem, though, with this show and how they've portrayed him so far. Other than the fact that he's a complete idiot, which I don't think we're supposed to think, he actually has no faults.
Yeah.
Not yet.
No, I agree.
So far, he is, I am dedicated to my cause. I am one of the Kunlun, and I am going to be the protector of this and that. And he... in every single scene is like, I don't want to hurt you, I don't want to hurt you. In every scene, there's not a single part of him yet that feels like he actually has flaws. He's a flawed character. He feels like he's supposed to be the perfect savior. And I think that's where the problems are really going to start creeping up, because he's not a believable person.
And so this is where, from the brief amount of the comics I've read, he is very dedicated to, Kunlun and that. But he kind of has fun with what he's doing. He's very relaxed still about it. And he is almost like a monk here in terms of his dedication in what you think of that, but instead he's kind of still a bit of a party boy, but he does this as well in the comics.
Yeah, he feels like that. He feels like he's still just this rich little twerp.
Yeah, or at least as a public face, at the very least. But this hasn't got anything like that.
I don't know. I think from the way he talks to people, to the way he initiates fights, to the way every single time he enters a situation, he does it in a way that feels unnatural to me.
Yeah, it's when he just sits there and kind of it just says proverbs.
Yeah, and I can get some of it. You can explain, okay, he was 10 when he went away. It's kind of like Star-Lord in Guardians of the Galaxy, where he didn't necessarily grow up in our civilization the same way. But it's some of it's just, no, like even as a 10-year-old, you would expect some of these things. You would expect them not to necessarily...
Yeah.
Especially since he has gotten older and he has still been growing up around other people.
That's the thing. Yeah, sure, he's missed the internet and Google. Fine.
No, he's not. He left in 2002. Piss off.
Good point. I forgot how recent 15.
He had a fat iPod when he landed.
He did have an iPod.
Sorry?
Yeah, he did have one, didn't he? The classic.
They didn't come out. They weren't out in 2002, were they? They didn't come out until like 2004 or something like that.
I don't know. I had one. I don't know when did I have mine.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just misremembering when that happened.
You got to remember, rich family. They could have bought one day one.
That's true.
So it's like maybe they weren't in the general public, for a little bit later, but early adopters.
Yeah. Like I get him not knowing what an iPhone is, because he has missed that. Like that is within 15 years. Absolutely, smartphones are a newish thing. Yeah, he still seems kind of impressed about the looking up stuff. He's like, you were around for the internet. Google had existed for years by the time you went. I was using Google at 10, so...
Yeah.
So
he's got no excuse.
So shut up. Dear. The annoying thing about this show is because it's part of this Defenders sort of chronology, because it's one of these Marvel shows, we are sort of obligated to do the whole thing. And therefore,
yet another comparison to Arrow.
Yeah, another comparison to Arrow, where we kind of force ourselves to do that. Hopefully, it perks up.
I'm really hoping the second. I really want them to discard of this villain, both of them. Tell me that they're just whatever. They're a side pawn in something else, something bigger, and make the other one better.
I think they will.
Please.
I think we'll get that Chinese lady from Daredevil. I think she'll show. She's going to show up, I think.
Madame Gao.
And I think the villain for the second half of the season will be related to all that stuff, which I don't know if I necessarily like, because I hated the hand in Daredevil, so that might just be.
It might be worse for you. For me, that's the sort of stuff I'd like. I didn't enjoy the hand, admittedly, but I like the mystical stuff in story.
I'm not necessarily dead set against it. It can be done well in a way I can enjoy. But I just never get the sense that it was going to be. And honestly, it feels like they've done this weird thing where they're not only not pleasing me, they're not pleasing anyone who wanted that either.
Yeah, they kind of tried to do both, but failing at both.
And I was like, oh, maybe the fighting will be good because it's martial arts, and it's not. It's kind of weak, and it's probably got the worst fighting of any of the shows. In all honesty,
I feel like Finn Jones, like, hey, I want to see how much I can do myself, and they will, and they kind of just let him instead of going, nah, let's get a stunt double and do this properly. I mean, obviously there is a stunt double for some of it, but like you said, some of it feels like he's learned it and done it just slowly.
yeah, it feels like he's just going too slow for it to look effective, and some editing could have saved that, but it.
Or just getting a professional to do all of it.
Yeah,
properly.
you get a stunt double to do it properly. Yeah. And there was so much of this where he just went to a park and sat down and talked to a homeless guy, and just sat and looked at his book, and I was like, my God, do something, God damn it, you idiot show.
I like how it sends like 40 minutes till he gets some shoes.
As he goes like 2/3 of the episode without any shoes.
Everyone
And
keeps
only-
going, hey, you go buy some shoes.
Only because Colleen hands him a pair out of pity.
Yeah.
I
I
wonder
was
if he,
surprised he put them on, to be honest, at that point.
I wonder if he took the homeless man's advice and pissed in them to get away from get the evil
Wait, we
essence.
saw him put them on before he pissed in them, for sure. Maybe he pissed in them later.
True. Maybe he did it quickly in the elevator though, or the stairs on the way down.
That's true. There was a couple of minutes unaccounted for, I suppose.
Oh my God, that is the first episode of Iron Fist. We have 12 more to go. The plan is to go 2 per day in terms of publishing them. We sometimes go a bit quicker with these Netflix shows, with the Marvel ones when there's 13. However, we do have a lot of other stuff on the schedule that we still need to do.
And frankly, we just don't want to watch it that much.
And since we're not enjoying it that much, it's going to be harder to like sort of dive through it. So
Plus,
reason,
even more
2 a
importantly,
day.
it's Paddy's Day, and I want a drink.
You drink enough on Arrow Day.
Yeah,
Then again, you could probably start drinking for Iron Fist if it gets that bad.
Exactly.
Alright, that is the first episode of Iron Fist. Let us know what you thought of it in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff helps us out a lot. Get us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Individual Twitters are on the screen for everyday ramblings. I mean, I hope you liked it more than we did, but honestly...
If you did, serious question, why? I genuinely want to know what it was that you saw in it that you enjoyed more than us, because I don't get it.
For me, this is a solid 4 out of 10, if we're going with a rating.
Yeah.
That's what this is. It's got the production value to not feel like complete shit, but it's lacking. Actually, I'll give you one positive. The one shot that I remember actually quite liking was Colleen standing. It's when she's witnessed Danny run away from the guys, and she's
on
standing
top of the fence.
Yeah, with her katana. That looked pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
Maybe it is karate she teaches because she's got a katana. That's more Japanese.
That is definitely more Japanese. Yeah, you're right.
I wonder what her backstory is actually, because she used to speak Mandarin, but now she's fluent in Japanese. That is actually quite interesting. How did we get?
Yeah,
that
and the way she said
combination?
Mandarin as a child makes me assume that was a family thing.
Yeah, it makes me, and well, her name's Wing as well, which makes me think Chinese.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if, like, okay, so she was born in China or with a Chinese family, but then she moved to Japan, or she grew up with a Japanese family.
Could be.
Or
I mean,
she just-
maybe that's another reason why he assumed Mandarin, because her name would have been on the poster for sure.
Sure. But I'm thinking, or maybe she just moved to America. But when she learned karate, she learned Japanese along with that, with her master.
Along with, yeah. Like I say, I think there's
Possibly.
a common thing to learn the language with the martial art.
But yeah, there you go. That's Iron Fist. We'll be back with episode 2 sometime later today. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.